Good morning. Here's your intel report for Tuesday, December 6, 2022. Geostrategic Intelligence Summary. U.S. Army accepts new missile system. The U.S. Army took delivery of the Typhoon weapon system from Lockheed Martin on Friday. The Typhoon is a truck-mounted vertical launching system designed to fire the SM-6 air defense missile and Tomahawk cruise missiles. The Tomahawk inventory is being upgraded to Block V and VB to provide improved navigation and an anti-ship capability. Effectively, the Army bought a modernized coastal defense battery with a 1,000-mile range that can double as air defense with the SM-6. This standoff capability significantly extends U.S. forces' ability to defend the homeland from missile attacks while keeping enemy ships on the edge of their strike capability. Russia-NATO Situation Report. Lavrov, NATO risks nuclear confrontation. Speaking to the Moscow Conference on Non-Proliferation, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov warned against NATO's increasing aggression, saying the alliance posed a serious threat to Russia, whose policies risked a direct clash between nuclear powers. Lavrov indicated Russia had no choice but to regularly send warning signals, which had been portrayed by the West as threat rhetoric. Claiming the United States had rejected negotiations over strategic stability, Lavrov warned of an avalanche-like increase in risks as existing problems accumulate. The comments come after bilateral talks on the new Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty, New START, the sole remaining nuclear treaty between the United States and Russia, was indefinitely postponed by the Russian government last week for political reasons and Western toxicity. Lavrov's commentary is reflective of Russia's increasing pattern of domestic propaganda narratives demonizing the West in an echo of Soviet Cold War mentality, to justify increased defense spending amid increasing societal hardships. Blasts rock airbases deep inside Russia. Russian state media reported explosions at 2 Russian airbases in what Russia claimed was a failed attack by Ukrainian UAVs. Russian defense officials say 3 service members were killed and 4 injured by the wreckage of downed Ukrainian UAVs flying at low altitude that were shot down by Russian armed forces at the Dyagolif airbase in Ryazan Oblast, located 185 kilometers, 115 miles, outside of Moscow. Officials say a second explosion at Russia's Engels Air Base in the Saratov Oblast, home to Russia's strategic bomber fleet, occurred during an unsuccessful attack by Soviet-made UAVs belonging to Ukraine. Reports indicate 2 planes at the Engels base received minor damage from falling debris. The claims made by the Russian Defense Ministry are inherently plausible given Ukraine's previous weaponization of Soviet-era Tu-141 Stryz reconnaissance drones. These drones have a range of over 1,000 kilometers, 620 miles, placing both bases within a potential striking range from Ukrainian territories. Should these strikes have originated from Ukrainian territory, they would also indicate that Ukraine can conduct a direct strike on Moscow. Russia refuses EU oil cap. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said the Russian government was preparing retaliatory responses to the EU's embargo and price cap placed on Russian oil. Citing and contradicting American claims that nothing will change following the price cap and embargo, Peskov called the adoption of these measures an obvious and indisputable step towards destabilizing world energy markets by the West. Peskov declined to elaborate on the nature of Russia's response, only saying that one is being prepared before adding that Russia will not recognize any ceilings. Turkey test fires indigenous VLS. Turkey successfully tested its first indigenous vertical launching system, VLS, on December 3. Turkey sped up the development of the system after the U.S. sanctioned Turkey in 2020 for buying the S-300 missile system from Russia. Once fully developed, Turkey will install the VLS on their new I-class frigates. Decoupling from the U.S. defense industry allows Turkey to go its own way on the world stage. They are a key NATO ally as they can effectively shut off Russia's only warm water port in Sevastopol. Full development and implementation of this weapon system is years off, but will be a key step towards Turkey being an independent regional power once again. Latin America Situation Report. Violent protesters imprisoned in Colombia labeled peace managers. Colombian President Gustavo Petro announced plans to designate imprisoned violent protesters as peace managers. The official designation would pave the way for the release of dozens of members of the protest group Primera Línea, First Line, imprisoned for their participation in violent anti-government protests in 2021. Colombian Justice Minister Nestor Ivan Osuna praised the move, which he says is neither a pardon nor an amnesty, as the individuals would still be subject to ongoing criminal proceedings and would have additional responsibilities to promote peace over violence following their release. Critics of the measure say it sends the wrong message as it releases those who were imprisoned for violating the law, not just protesting, saying those who protest must do it peacefully as protesting is a right. China and Indo-Pacific Situation Report. North Korea shells buffered zones in response to U.S. sanctions. South Korean defense officials reported North Korean forces fired more than 130 artillery shells into the maritime buffered zones off the coast of the Korean peninsula. Describing the incident as a clear violation of military agreements that seek to reduce tensions, South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff issued warnings to Pyongyang calling for an immediate halt of the barrage. North Korean defense officials said the artillery barrage was a direct response to multiple launch rocket artillery fired by South Korean forces, saying Korean People's Army forces would respond to any provocations and settle accounts with staunch and overwhelming military action. North Korean defense officials warned the South against unnecessarily kindling the flame of escalation. The incident comes days after the adoption of a new round of sanctions against North Korea by the United States, Japan, and South Korea. Chinese hackers stole millions in U.S. COVID relief funds. In the first publicly acknowledged case of foreign pandemic fraud, Secret Service officials confirmed a Chinese hacker group known as APT-41 or Winty stole over $20 million in federal COVID relief funds. Describing the group as a notable player in ongoing investigations into pandemic-related fraud, officials, the Chinese group targeted small business association loans and unemployment insurance funds in more than 12 states. ATP-41 has previously been indicted by the U.S. Justice Department for corporate cyber-espionage efforts targeting over 100 companies at the behest of the Chinese government. Inside the Beltway. White House. President Biden is scheduled to visit the Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company facility in Phoenix, Arizona, to discuss the administration's economic policies. Congress. The House Oversight and Reform Committee is scheduled to hold a hearing on political internet monitoring. The committee will hear House Resolution 1479 requesting the president turn over documents related to the monitoring of pro-gun, pro-life, and conservative groups under the Internet Covert Operations Program operated by the U.S. Postal Inspection Service. The Senate Agriculture, Nutrition, and Forestry Committee is scheduled for a hearing on Farm Bill 2023 research programs. Domestic Intelligence Summary. The shooting of the power substations in Moore County, North Carolina, over the weekend revealed the continued vulnerability of the grid to a deliberate attack. In many areas, the security of power substations are a fence and a lock with an open line of sight to critical equipment. Water security remains a long-term domestic concern. Officials at the Glen Canyon Dam in Arizona are sounding the alarm about low water levels in the Lake Powell Reservoir, saying that a minimum power pool requiring the shutdown of power turbines is now a possibility. An amendment to end the military COVID-19 vaccination policy is on the negotiating table for the new NDAA. Republicans pushing for the amendment said recruitment and retention are being hurt by the policy. North Carolina incident shows grid is vulnerable, according to former Federal Energy Regulatory Commission Chairman and GRIP Policy Consulting CEO John Wellinghoff. The incident in North Carolina shows that the electrical grid continues to be vulnerable. Duke Energy General Manager Jason Hollyfield said the damage is beyond repair in some areas. According to the Department of Energy, there have been 9 physical attacks and 60 acts of vandalism on the U.S. electrical grid so far this year. Drought hits California farmers. Lake Powell water levels dangerously low. Almond farmers in California, where 80% of the world's almonds are grown, are tearing out orchards in favor of other crops or foregoing watering due to high costs and water cuts. The United States Department of Agriculture expects a production decrease of 11% in the 2022 to 2023 season. California's Department of Water Resources announced an initial state water project allocation of 5% for 2023, the third year in a row with a 5% allocation. Officials at the Glen Canyon Dam in Arizona said that drought conditions have made a minimum power pool scenario a possibility. A minimum power pool scenario would require the hydroelectric turbines to be shut down or risk damage. White House prepares for probes. Republicans plan to investigate alleged Saudi deal. The Biden administration is ramping up a team to handle probes from a Republican-controlled House next year. The administration brought current House Oversight Committee Staff Director Russell Anello, who has experience dealing with Republican lawmakers. Ranking Republican member of the House Oversight Committee James Comer, Republican Kentucky, sent a letter to Secretary of State Blinken announcing an investigation into a secret deal to boost oil production between the Biden administration and Saudi Arabia. Comer also sent letters to the administration announcing investigations into environmental policies and the release of oil from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. NDAA could roll back COVID vaccine policy. Government spending bill deadline approaching. Chairman of the House Armed Services Committee Adam Smith, Democrat Washington, said a rollback of the policy was on the negotiation table but hasn't been decided yet. Smith said that a vaccine policy from August 2021 didn't make sense to continue in the new bill, but a push to reinstate personnel discharged for refusing the vaccine was a red line. Appropriators and party leaders are negotiating a framework for the bill funding the government with a deadline of December 16. Appropriators warned that a full-year continuing resolution would undermine national security. End report.